Welcome to Cross Border Interviews, the show where we dive into the insights of municipal political leaders from across Canada. Now, our mission on this show is quite simple. It is to shine a light on the dedicated individuals who day in and day out work around the council table to shape the communities that we call home. Now, for today's edition of the show, we are honored to sit down and chat with the town of Canmore Mayor, Sean Krausert. Canmore is a small community surrounded by the towering peaks and flowing valleys of Kananaskis Country. With year-round activities like hiking, biking, cross-country skiing, and so much more, it blends small-town charm with adventurous spirit. There's no single way to experience this place. Whether you come for the challenge, the scenery, or simply a change of pace, the town of Canmore gives you the space to move to your own rhythm. Settle in, stay a while, and see what finds you here in Canmore. From the smallest village to the largest city, across every region of the province, Alberta Municipalities represents the communities where over 85% of Albertans live. AB Munis provides a united voice for 265 of Alberta's 330 municipalities, including summer villages, towns, cities, and specialized municipalities. As Alberta's largest municipal group, AB Munis listens to municipal leaders and advocates for solutions to their common issues. Additionally, AB Munis supports local governments by providing services specially designed to meet their operational needs. And they bring their members together regularly so they can share ideas and information so that their communities can thrive. Check out Alberta Municipalities at abmunis.ca and follow them on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, now called X. Mayor, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about yourself and talking about the great community of the town of Canmore for our 899th episode of the Cross Border Interviews. You were our last episode of season 8 before we jump into season 9 in literally in a few hours after this airs. But I've got to start with the same question I've asked 899 times before you. And that is, where does your sense of duty to serve your community come from, Sean?
Wow. First of all, congratulations on all those shows. You know, working for my community is really both a selfless and selfish thing. I want our community to be the best it possibly can be. And I see that there are needs, and I want to be part of helping meet those needs. But the selfish part is that I get to benefit from that better community too. And so that's why I do what I do.
But giving back to your community and making the changes you want to see in your community can happen many different ways, through nonprofits, through just volunteerism. But you chose the municipal route, which many people would say you have to have an ego for to become a municipal councillor. What was the decision based on getting involved municipally rather than through other ways, forums that you could give back to your community?
Well, I have been involved in other ways. I've worked in the not-for-profit sector. I've been engaged in social advocacy. I helped start up our community annual dinner that feeds people. I've been involved with starting up our cold weather shelter and a number of other things. But I saw that there were some things that really the municipality is the spot that had to deal with those. It's where the rubber hits the road for so many different things, and I felt that I had the skill set to be involved with that, so I went that route. And it was a little bit of a surprise to me because I had long been interested in politics. When I was younger, I thought I'd enter politics at some point in my life, but I always thought it was going to be at the federal or provincial level. I actually wasn't even thinking municipal at that time. But as I got older and involved in various things in my community, I realized that That's where I want it to be. That said, my predecessor, he once, somebody asked, why do you run? And he says, oh, I think it's a genetic defect. Uh, that, yeah, you have to have something wrong with you to put yourself in harm's way like this sometimes.
Looking back on your time in municipal office so far, I've had the pleasure of chatting with a few of your counselors, previous counselors and current counselors on the show, and I want to get your take on this. Looking back on the challenges that municipalities are facing in not even 2025, but even 2024, 2023, going back to when you first were elected, I can imagine you've had to make some very tough decisions around that council table. As an elected official, as knowing that you only have one vote on council, how do you make those tough decisions at the end of the day? Because I can imagine that probably for me, it would keep me up at night because you have to make sure that you're doing the best vote for the best interest of the entire community. And sometimes I can imagine, and I know this to be true because you and I've chatted before, that sometimes 100% of the people will never agree with you on the decisions you make. How do you make those tough decisions at the end of the day?
Well, you really touched on it when you said you have to make the decisions in the best interest of the community as a whole. And the fact that I, like my colleagues, only have one vote each, and you need at least four to make things happen, is actually a comfort. It's not any one of us that have to uh, make a particular decision. It's as a group we make the decision, and the will of the group and all of our experiences, all of our expertise, all of our knowledge that we bring to bear on a particular situation, chooses the path. And so there's some comfort in that. It's just a given that there's going to be somebody upset with pretty much every decision you make. I mean, it might be just a very small group, but in this day and age, even a very small group can be very vocal, and so you're going to hear about it, and that is a difficult part, but it also helps us remember how important these decisions are to people. They affect people's lives. And so, yes, it's difficult, but you keep focused on the good of the community as a whole. Let council do its process, and then we move forward.
I want to challenge you a little bit on what you just said at the beginning of that answer there, if you don't mind. Now, you're right, and I agree with you that the mayor has one vote on council and only one vote. But the perception is the mayor dictates what's going on at council. Therefore, your vote is always going to potentially, quote unquote, sway other members of council in where they're going to lean. How important is it for yourself as mayor when making those tough decisions to allow other councillors to have their time to voice their concerns, voice their the pros and cons of an issue before you step in? Or do you find yourself needing to step in and say, okay, this is how we should be looking at it, rather than them saying this is how we should be looking at it? Because I can imagine that's probably a fine balancing act that you have to do, because residents, and I've chatted with many across Canada, would say, oh, the mayor just dictates no matter where they are, whether they be in Canmore, whether they be in the village of Alex or the city of Calgary. While they only have one vote, you're still the mayor, so you're going to dictate what's going on in the community.
Yeah, well, that's a common misperception, and I think that comes from TV or something, because people think that I can just walk out of my office here and go tell the CAO what to do, or direct the worker that's out in front of the civic center, and I can't do that at all. None of us can. It's only the will of the council as a whole that can direct the CAO, and then the CAO directs everybody else. So there's certainly a misperception that actually can get in the way, because people start to think, why aren't you just doing something? And they're expecting me to do something that I cannot do. No mayor can do. Now, Mayor, of course, is the spokesperson for the council, spokesperson for the community, often the lightning rod for some things. So I take that seriously. And I recognize that, you know, there is a perception out there. And so I try to be vocal as possible, while always portraying what is the will of council. Um, you asked the question, how important is it that I allow other councillors to speak? It's more than important. It's absolutely essential. In fact, I tell each of my councillors, if you don't speak to why you're voting, and this is for not just the regular passing a borrowing bylaw type thing that you're just following the budget. You may not get a lot of discussion there, but for issues that require some explanation, if you don't speak to your vote, you're not doing your job. And so I actually put it to them that we need to know why you're voting as you're voting. And so what you'll see with the councils that I chair, you see a very talkative group. I mean, it's a great group of individuals. They bring to all that they have to bear on these decisions, and they let us know what it's all about. So absolutely, it's not just my voice. It's all seven of us speaking to these issues.
One of the biggest challenges I think municipalities are facing in 2025, and this is my perspective for those who are about to send nasty emails, please send them to me, not the mayor, and I'm going to get his opinion on what I'm about to say. Please send them to me and I will file them in the appropriate location. Now, Mayor Sean, the one thing I find in 2025, and I would say probably over the last 5 years, apathy at the municipal level is at an all-time low. 20 years ago, if I walked into a town hall during a council meeting, I would probably see about 10, 15 people at those council meetings. Now, if I walk into a council meeting and I see two people, I'm excited. I'm ecstatic to see people at a council meeting. Yes, you'll say that they're live streamed. Yes, you'll say that people are watching them afterwards. Understandable, but I would say I'd be hard pressed if I walked down the town of Canmore streets today and asked 100 people what's going on at council. 100% of them would be able to tell me. Probably about 10% would be able to tell me what's going on. Has that made the job of municipal council hard? Because when you're looking at issues that are in front of your council, you have to have the best decisions, but those decisions have to be based on what you're hearing from the public, but also what you're hearing from an administration. And if the residents are not engaged, which I would say on the Canadian-wide landscape, they are not, it would be harder for a municipal council to make those decisions based on what the people want. Or in Canmore, are you seeing different? Are people willing to engage with you?
Well, okay, there's a few things there. First of all, yeah, the apathy is widespread.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just look at the recent municipal elections throughout Alberta, and at the same time, there was elections going in Quebec, and all of them were about this 40% level. You had exceptions, small community, really small community, they might have, 80% or something. But for most communities, we were in that 40% range, right?
And as low, and I apologize to Blaine Higgs, the mayor of Lethbridge here, but as low as 19% in some communities.
Yeah.
And to me, and I'm saying this respectfully to the people of Lethbridge, that is appalling. But anyway, continue on.
Like I say, it varies, and I'm sure that there's some specific reasons why it's higher or lower in some, but generally, there's low voter turnout, which translate to low participation. However, I do find that people participate a lot when they find something that really affects them. I also notice in Canmore, and I'll put the breadth and depth of the experience and education of our community up against anyone, anywhere. We have incredible, diverse community with backgrounds and passion, and they do show up at certain times. We have a previous council, had a 6-day marathon public hearing, and with thousands of letters written. That shows a level of engagement that certainly gives one hope that there is a heart still beating in the public realm. We also had just last council an incredibly positive and extensive public engagement around our downtown area redevelopment plan. And we had one of our engagements had more than 2,000 participants, which in a town our size is really significant. So it varies. But yes, I'm very concerned about the future of democracy when people don't show up.
Do you get a sense that people want to be engaged with you? Or actually, I'm going to rephrase the question if you don't mind. Again, going back to the last 5 years, I would say municipal councilors, and even in this last municipal election, are talking about issues that are traditionally not in that quote unquote municipal jurisdiction. More and more municipal councilors that I speak to are talking about, and this is because residents are asking them because they are the closest to the people. And you probably know your mayor or your councilor rather than your MLA or your MP because you're in your community 24/7. In your time in office, have you found that more and more people are engaging you, residents are engaging you as mayor on issues that are not traditionally in that municipal jurisdiction, but are asking you about healthcare, asking you about education, asking you about challenges that are going on with the federal government, with your proximity to Banff National Park, with around environment that municipalities don't have any control over, but residents want answers from you because you're their elected representative?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. The general public, not everyone has the understanding of what level of government deals with that. All they know is that something needs to be done, and you're right there. So, what are you doing about it? And it's hard because sometimes you have to say, well, that's not a municipal jurisdiction. And they think you're just passing the buck. But the reality is we have to work within a set of rules. And there are certain things that we are allowed and not allowed to do. And so, that is hard. And there are issues like childcare. Childcare drastically affects our community. Housing drastically affects our community. Inclusivity issues drastically affects our community. And so we have to venture into some of these areas for the good of our community, but we always have to do so in a balanced approach, recognizing that there's only a certain way that we can go on some issues, and sometimes then our role becomes advocacy. Advocacy to other levels of government to address the needs of that are being brought up.
And I'm going to just clarify my statement a little bit as well, because one thing I often hear from municipal leaders when it comes to that engagement around provincial or even federal issues is residents get frustrated, and I say this respectfully to all MLAs and MPs out there listening to this, but residents get frustrated when they send emails or letters or comments to a higher level of government, they don't get the response. But when a mayor emails an MLA or an MP, I guarantee you they're getting a response back quicker because that title, even though we should not look at titles, that title does carry a little bit weight when it comes to your member of parliament or a member of legislative assembly, depending on how well you get along with them. That's
Well, I mean, there's some truth to what you're saying generally. I do know that there's some individuals that probably have a lot more access to other levels of government than I do, and sometimes depending on the issue, sometimes we don't get responses either. But you just keep trying, and I want to go back to something you're talking about before too. Do people want to be involved? Because I think I didn't pick up on that. I do think they want to be involved. People are busy, and there's a lot of stress. And ever since COVID too, there's like this under the surface angst that is built up. There's just so much going on. So we've never been so inundated with news from a variety of sources and misinformation and alternate perspectives. And to an element that's good, but it also to an element is really harmful. You get more division and polarization. And so with people, the vast majority of people, I think, are kind of caught in the middle, and they're just trying to live their lives, and they're trying to take care of their families, pay their rent, get food on the table, and they don't have the time. And in our community, many families have to work not only, the heads of the household working a job each. Sometimes it's multiple jobs each, and then and kids are busy with stuff, and so taking your kids and trying to get them involved, there's so much. And so, despite the best intentions and wishes to be involved, we all know we can't be everywhere.
Well, it comes back to the old adage, and it's something I've said numerous times on the show. 5% of the population will be vocal, and they will be the loud vocal minority in a general community. 15% of the population looks at those 5% and said, okay, we have to just voice our concerns, but we don't have to do as much as they're doing, but we just have to make sure we keep them in check. But 80% of the population is under the impression, because as you said, they're busy and they have lives to live. As long as my taxes are low, my water turns on when I have a shower every morning, and my garbage is picked up and my snow is removed when it needs to be removed, I don't have time for municipal government. That's why we've elected the council to look at the issues of the day. So we're going to go about our business. When you have a tough decision, come ask me. But until that moment, I've got other things on my plate. And that is that 80% of the population. I would say that probably transcribes to every single municipality in Canada. 80% of the population just doesn't have the time. I'm a nerd. I love municipal government. I love local politics. Okay. This is what I do. This is what gets me up every morning. I'm not normal. I know that. Okay. So I'm in that 5% of the population. So I just wanted to say that before we move into the next segment, unless you have something to add there.
No, I mean, I don't know about the exact percentages, but you're right. The vast majority of people, um, if things are going along, they're very happy to let somebody else deal with the details. And yet there's that small portion that think the exact opposite. No, you should be consulting me on every decision, and that's just not sustainable.
Not one bit. But I want to turn to the town of Canmore as a whole. And before I do this, I'm going to preface this line of questioning with the following. And we talked about it earlier on in the interview, but I just want to make sure I say this before we talk about the issues that are going on and the accomplishments of the town of Canmore. This is a conversation between myself and the mayor. This is not a motion of council, not a direction of council, not even a policy of council. As he said at the beginning of the interview, he needs 4 members of that council to vote in favor or against any motion, policy, or direction to direct administration to implement said policy or bylaw or to repeal any policy or bylaw. So with that being said, again, this is his opinion and his opinion alone. Oh, 899 times. You think I'd be able to do that better, but I still get tongue-tied over a few times.
You did great.
Well, thank you. Mayor, as of recording this in the middle of December 2025, in your opinion, what do you see as the biggest challenge or challenges, you can say up to 3 if you want, that facing the town of Canmore today?
I look at 2 issues in particular as being existential threats to the community, and so they have to be the biggest. One is our housing and affordability issues here. We have by far the most expensive housing in the province and some of the most expensive housing in the country. By far more expensive than anywhere else in Alberta. With the exception of our neighbors in the national parks here, I mean, they're also very expensive, but it's also a little bit of a different situation. So that is actually something that mountain towns and various places have dealt with from time to time. And we know that script. If you don't do something about it differently, eventually your community gets gutted and you lose everybody that works here. Everybody that earns a living here can't make a life here. They move elsewhere, and they come in, and the community shuts down at 5 o'clock, and it becomes more monolithic, and you lose all of that texture and diversity that makes a great community. So that's number one existential threat. Number two is emergency preparation and mitigation in particular, mitigation of wildfires in our community. We live in a unnaturally thick forest due to fire suppression efforts over the last 100 years. And we are needing to do everything within our power to make this community as safe as possible should or when an emergency arises. And there may be a variety of emergencies. We dealt with Steep Creek flooding in 2013. Obviously, the biggest threat that we face right now is wildfire. And if I were to add a third, it would be human-wildlife coexistence. The beauty of this place is that both humans and wildlife find value here, and we have to make sure that there's space for both.
I want to start with emergency management. Now, the best time to talk about an emergency is before it happens. But in 2025 and even prior to this, I feel like we are becoming more reactive to issues rather than being proactive on issues. But I know for a fact that the town of Canmore, even with the municipal district of Bighorn and the town of Banff, have been working diligently over the last few years around wildfire management and around wildfire mitigation. Looking at the last year and looking at what we're coming into in 2026, because we don't know what's going to happen, and we never know what's going to happen. It's the name of the game. Is the town of Canmore in a place right now where you feel that if, and I say this respectfully, if something was to happen, you would be in a good spot to help ensure that the safety of your community is the top priority?
Yeah, well, I like to say that it's always relative. We are in the best situation that we've ever been in with relates to an emergency because we're continuing to get more and more prepared. But that work will never end. We always need to get more and more prepared. So our community has been doing like fire smarting and thinning and stuff within our community for 20 years. We, have been looking at in recent years also, making sure infrastructure is protected from a variety of different hazards that could present themselves. So this work's been ongoing. It's really gone to the next level over the last few years because back in late 2022 and into 2023, we started advocating for to the provincial government for the lands around the community. There's so much fuel there to be thinned out, and the province responded with funding that has translated into a community fire guard that's being constructed. It'll take years to finish, and by years I mean like 3 or 4 more. But we've dealt with the most risky areas first, and we've moved on to the next phase, and then the next phase, and so we are continuing to do that. Also, we have community groups looking at fire smarting their neighborhoods to the next level, right? And so that's coming forward. So yes, we are as prepared more prepared than we've ever been, and we still have more to do.
I want to talk about housing because I think Canmore is in this weird, unique space in its life right now. If there was ever a community where I think housing needs to be more addressed from a provincial, federal, and even a municipal level, I would say that is the town of Canmore. And I say that respectfully because it is a common theme that I hear from your councillors, I hear from your residents, that housing is a top priority. And it comes with that also adage of affordable housing. And that is the big thing that I think a lot of people don't take into consideration. Housing is great, but affordable housing is even better. Now, before we talk about housing in general, I got to ask the question I think is on a lot of people's minds right now. But what does affordable housing mean to the town of Canmore? What does that look like? Because I think that looks like a lot differently than if I was talking to the mayor of Calgary or even the mayor of Regina.
Yeah, yeah. Affordable is a misnomer. I don't know if we're ever going to get to really affordable, But what we're trying to get to is more accessible to the average person. And we have found that no market product introduced in Canmore has ever remained accessible past the first owner or two. We have our median condo price here is over $900,000. Our median single family home is over $1.4 million. The vast majority of people cannot afford either of those. Okay. We have rents that, single units or single bedrooms that, are being rented for close to $3,000. So it's just out of whack. So what we need to do is we need to have more non-market housing. I'm not talking about social housing. I'm talking about product that does not appreciate with the market. So that's ownership units. And so we build them, let's say through Canmore Community Housing. They're sold essentially at cost. And they may still be $350,000, $550,000, which is a big price, but they're much more accessible than 900,000 or 1.4 million. And then for rental, we're looking at a certain percentage below market. Our Canmore Community Housing has a policy that it must be at least 10% below market, but what our actual units are more in that 30 to 50% below market. With a project that we have going ahead, the term is deeply affordable, and that means that they're going to be coming in at somewhere in that 30 to 50% below market, and so that's what we're trying to achieve, is more and more of those units that do not appreciate with the market. And that's the only thing that's remained accessible over time. And so we have to put as much effort and work into that as possible. And that has to fall to the municipality, because it's non-market. It's the market actually can't afford to build it in the same way. Now, that said, some of these non-market units will come through private initiatives, but they're a small percentage of a whole overall amount. So we will get some there. And I'm incredibly thankful for those developers that are doing that, because they actually don't need to. We can't force them to. So they are doing it for the good of the community. But we also then have to have projects that are 100% non-market, and those have to be driven by the municipality.
Are you optimistic that we can do it?
Oh, I'm optimistic. Otherwise, I couldn't stay in the job. It would just be too disheartening. Yeah, we have some land that we have just zoned, and it will create 1,300 units of housing, of which 1,000 must be non-market. We have a few other pieces of land that will probably add another few hundred units of non-market. And then through the private sector, I see coming online over the next 10 to 15 years, probably another 700 units or so. So in that time frame, that's 2,000 units of non-market housing. And a recent study done by the Bow Valley Regional Housing indicated that Canmore needed about 2,000 units by the early 2030s. And so we're in the zone there. Where our difficulty is being able to pay for it.
Okay, so there's about 12 different questions I need to ask, and I'm going to try and do it all in one question, because I think this is an important conversation. Understandable, you need housing, which I think you do, and I think we both would come to the agreement that it is a priority for you. But the other flip side that we don't often talk about when we talk about housing is, can the current infrastructure that we have handle that increase of growth in our community? Now, you say 2030 that you need about 2,000 extra units. 2030 is about 4 years from now, and mid 2030 is about 9 years from now. Can the current service levels that your infrastructure, whether it be wastewater treatment facilities, your lagoons, handle that increase of those 2,000 units? Or are you needing to do this in conjunction? Because when we talk about housing, you also talk about affordability, and affordability comes down to, can the municipality do things in relationship to growth around these infrastructure projects without doing it fully on the backs of the people who are currently there. Because if people are struggling right now, you add a $20 million lagoon project to it, boy, I can imagine that's not a good time to be a mayor.
So you got lots of questions, and I got lots of answers. So lots of things I want to say there. First of all, the town of Canmore since the late 1990s has been projecting grow out at about 35,000 people, which is double what we're
Yeah.
currently at. So we've been planning our infrastructure for that number of people. And these 2,000 units would be within that number. So I'm not seeing a problem there. Now, you could plan for it, but it has to be paid for. And so we, obviously through offsite levies, we do our best to be fair to all involved, both the developers and our ratepayers, to have new growth pay for new growth, and anything that benefits the current residents is paid by current residents. So that process is in the works as well. We're actually involved in an update to our offsite levy bylaw right now. And so, yes, I'm optimistic that funding for infrastructure is there. It's always going to be tight though, because you also have aging infrastructure. And so, you have to not only deal with the new growth, but you have to make sure that what's currently there is serviced when it needs to be serviced and replaced at end of life, etc. So that I'm feeling okay with. There's process. It's not easy, but we're moving along. It's the actual funding for the housing itself that is needed, and also, we try to keep the costs that are paid for by the end user, the renter or the owner, sustainable and in that accessible range. So there are some, what otherwise might be project costs that are not recouped. And so that's why we need to be putting, have a mechanism by which we can gather revenue to cover those costs.
The last topic that you talked about around when it comes to challenges, then we'll just quickly jump into accomplishments and what you're proud about, Canmore, is around that living with the beautiful nature that you have and the wildlife that you have. Now, I follow Wade Graham, counselor for the town of Canmore, on social media, and I get my news about how many wild lions or moose or deer are in your community more often than I probably think I should, but here we are in 2025. Now, that could be a double-edged sword, because to live with nature is one thing, to live with the beautiful wildlife is another, but there is safety concerns and aspects around that. How has the town of Canmore ensured that while you coexist with the natural habitat that is surrounding you, you also ensure that people are being safe and not feeding the wildlife that could potentially become hazardous to your community?
Yeah, so Canmore is long been a leader in human wildlife coexistence. We had bear-proof bins long before people knew what bear-proof bins were. We have strong bylaws with regards to not having wildlife attractants. We also have capital projects that fence fields and areas that could otherwise look pretty delicious to a herd of elk. And we definitely do not want the wildlife in the town center. That's the human space. We need to make sure we're providing them space through corridors and habitat patches and cross valley connections to make sure that they can move and thrive, right? And we need to stay out of those areas. So it's a constant effort of trying to reduce the attraction into the town while protecting the areas that are for the wildlife to move. And I get it. We're the interlopers here, actually, my friends in Municipal, they dealt with this a lot better than we did a long time ago, and they had a whole life cycle around it. Now that there's more humans here and settlers that have come into these lands, And we go to the valley bottom too. It's the highly desirable spot where the animals wanted to be. Well, if we're occupying that space, we have to make sure that they have space around us. So what we have done also is we work regionally, and town of Banff, town of Canmore, the NB of Bighorn, and the Alberta government sit on a human wildlife coexistence roundtable. And from that, we have a technical group that takes direction from us, and they created a report and for the area that we all are then on the same page. And so the town of Canmore has taken our part from that and created an implementation plan so that we are doing those things that are most recommended by the experts to be as respectful and supportive of the wildlife as we can possibly be.
I want to flip the original question on its head for a second. And we always talk about challenges because that's what sells newspapers, but we need to get into the concept of telling the good news stories that are happening in our community. As mayor, what's the thing that makes you proud to be the mayor of Canmore? The thing that gets you up and you say, you know what? This is why we do what we have to do to make our community great.
I'm most proud of addressing these hard issues head on. And it means making difficult decisions. It means doing things knowing that there's likely going to be a little bit of a battle about it, which ultimately may result in a better solution yet, right? But doing nothing is not an answer. Hoping is not a strategy. And so we need to take action. And I've been very proud of the councils that I've been on, that we focus on taking that action for the good of the community, even if it's difficult.
Now I want to turn to my last segment, and it's a quick segment. It's my favorite segment because it's my favorite segment, but I'm talking to the mayor of my favorite community in Alberta. And the reason I say that, and I do not mean that disrespectfully to the city that I currently live in, but your community is the reason I fell in love with Alberta because it is the home location of one of my favorite television shows that was filmed. The first 3 episodes was filmed in your community, and that is called Everwood. It was a WB show back in the 2000s, from 2000 to 2004. It was filmed on location in your community, and I fell in love with it, and I go there every year and I think about that show. But for you, what makes actually, before I ask that question, what are your favorite spots in Canmore? Where do you go to decompress after a long day?
Oh, I like being by water, and so walking along the river is something I love. Um, I often say that if I ever wake up and take the mountains for granted, it's going to be a sad thing. The mountains change every single day. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of being in Canmore is you can be anywhere and see those mountains. And they change with the snowfall, with light, with clouds, the whole thing. Some days they look huge. Some days they look like part of a painting. So, it's just, so I love just taking a few moments wherever I am to look up at the mountains. Where else? I actually love walking down Main Street, and particularly in the summer where it's now pedestrianized, and checking out the shops or stopping at a cafe and having a coffee or a meal. Those are the sorts of things I love to do, and I also love riding my bike on the pathways. So.
Well, I have affinity for Canmore, and I think more people should visit it. And hopefully, even with a potential train that is going from Calgary to Banff, all speculative right now, there's a stop in Canmore because I think more people should stop and smell the roses in Canmore because it's a beautiful community. So before I let you go, I have one final question, and it's the $1,000,000 question, Mayor. In your opinion, what makes Canmore a great place to live, to work, and to raise a family?
It's the people. When we moved here in 1996, my wife and my year-and-a-half-old son, we didn't know anybody here. We didn't have family here. We moved because I bought into a law practice at the time. It was just a very small law practice. And we were embraced by community. We got involved in a few things. This is where our network is. This is now where our kids were raised. This is their hometown. We've lived here, my family, my wife and I, more years of our life than not. And it's the people, and they are the ones that bring the smile to your face as you're walking down the street. And we're still the size of the community where you run into people all the time, in the grocery stores, grocery stores and Main Street and wherever. So yeah, definitely the community, the people.
Well, Mayor, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for sitting down with me and chatting over the last 45 minutes about yourself and the town of Canmore. Like I said, Canmore has always held a special place in my heart, and it is the reason why I have fallen in love and fell in love with Alberta so long ago. So thank you so much for being my 899th guest. And next time I'm in Canmore, I will look you up and hopefully we can grab a coffee and maybe take a tour down the river bend.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. And I think you have great taste in community. So thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Cross Border Interviews. Now, this is our last episode of season 8 of the show. We do have one more episode left before our winter hiatus, and that is the season 9 premiere of the show, which will be airing in a few hours. Now, your support means the world to us. This year, this season, has been our best on record. From you who have tuned in via audio platforms or via YouTube or Rogers TV, thank you so much for tuning in and making Cross Border Interviews the best season yet. We so look forward to bringing you more great content in season 9 in 2026 and beyond. But until then, we want to remind you, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platforms, or if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button now. Also, if you can, share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, as it helps us grow our audience. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back in a few short hours with a brand new episode and season 9 premiere of Cross Border Interviews. Till then, everyone.